Greetings to each and all. Back again. What we're looking at this week is what is coming to you in January of 2019. I'm going to open the This Week in Black Media channel, as I discussed before, and I will be posting a video there every Wednesday, and there'll be correspondences between this channel and Ancestral Productions posts that come every Sunday. For those of you that have joined us for a while, you know that I've been talking about doing the This Week in Black Media for some time now, and I've been setting up different presentation formulas for that through the presentation software, etc., that we'll be seeing in 2019 also. But what I had mentioned earlier when I first started discussing doing this segment was my intuition that the same topics would start being talked about by our black media community, and while that could be just looked at as common sense that would be the case, for me it was more of an intuitive that I saw it coming, and I guess to substantiate that better, you'd have to see the other data that I've had that based on these same intuitions that showed that. So essentially what I'm seeing is the cream is starting to rise, and a separation from the Eurocentric domination of our social narrative. And when we start to see the same media discuss the same topics, it's like a magnet. It's going to attract other voices, other personalities, etc. It's going to attract moneyed interests. And our topics that we talk about, that we have been shunned for talking about, are going to have their own platform. And I think several of those in black media see that coming. So if you look over here on the right side, what we have over here is we have the channels that I listen to. The Advice Show, Dr. Watkins, Yvette Carnell, Professor Black, Lisa Cabrera, and Roland Martin is new, has been critiqued by others, but he has a large audience, and I see his channel as another kind of thing of the hints to come, and we have to look at the subject matter that he's discussing, and something that would not have been discussed by people with that kind of profile prior to these previous channels, like the Advice Show. Everyone that you see there, Yvette Carnell, Professor Black, we wouldn't see it with that large of a contingency if they hadn't pioneered the way there. So I think it's also important to be clear about that. We have to pay homage to those that have been doing it for a long time, without compensation and without moneyed interests. But ultimately, I think when we see larger groups, people with more money, it's better for us as a community on a whole, from a global standard, that our voices are heard, and that what's happening is we're beginning to tune in and resonate on the same frequency, is what I'm trying to communicate. And we have a nice example of that this week, with Mark Lamont Hill being fired from CNN for telling the truth, as far as I'm concerned, about the crimes against humanity committed by the Zionist machine in Israel against the indigenous Palestinian populations that were there to begin with. And when I discuss indigenous Palestinian populations to begin with, I'm talking about the quote-unquote sub-Saharan African DNA signature that's shared by both the Ashkenazi Jews and the Palestinians, and that signature is us. It's our DNA, the peoples of the black diaspora, the African diaspora, which is not a subject I'm going to go in too deeply right now today, but that we're the substratum to both of those populations. And you see the Ashkenazi wants to create themselves as exclusive or special, and there's nothing in the historical record that shows they have a right to do that. What they do have is they have military power, and they have the support of the American government, and they have them fooled into believing that anything said against them is anti-Semitism. And when we look at hate, and when we look at the Talmudic Zionism, when we look at its hate and its racism towards any other group that is not deemed Jewish according to their narrative, we can see the hypocrisy. When you have that information, accusations of anti-Semitism don't work, because you can tell them, define a Semite. What's a Semite according to you? Dr. John Henrik Clarke asked us that a long time ago. What is a Semite? You see, number one, it's an Afro-Asiatic language family. And when we go according to those distinctions, then the Arab peoples, the Palestinian peoples that are there, that were there in the first place, they're Semites too. So that would make the war crimes that the Zionists are committing against the Palestinians. It would make the Ashkenazi Jews, the Zionist Ashkenazi Jews, the biggest anti-Semites that there are. You see, the people like the ADL and those that come with that rhetoric, they can't run that over here. I'll embarrass them. I'll go to Shlomo San's book, The Invention of the Jewish People. They do not want to discuss that. But we're gonna start talking about it on This Week in Black Media and other channels. So, and if there's issues with the microphone, I've been battling with microphones. I have two other microphones. It's microphone issues. I have to figure out how to work this last one. It's the best USB microphone you can get for a laptop, and I'll continue to fine-tune it. So it's not that effort hasn't been put to try to get more clarity, and absolutely that is needed. If I want to be clear in the communications that take place on this channel, because I think this channel here is important. What we're looking at here is a hint of things to come when moneyed interest comes. You see, this is something pioneering right here. But also, when we look at our black community, or our black leaders in our media and our social media, we'll find several of them that talk about reparations, or talk about how wrong the Africans of the diaspora have been treated. But what we'll find is very few of them will do what Dr. Boyce Watkins does, and that's he talks about Israel. He doesn't care. He says they're wrong. He says it's foul, and he's not afraid to say it because he's free, because he's not accountable to anyone. You see, so if anybody's talking in reparations, if they are not critical, and if they are not discussing the Jewish involvement in the transatlantic slave trade, they're chicken shit, and they're going to get called to task too. It's all coming. A great deal of censorship goes on these YouTube channels too. That's another reason why I opened this Week in Black Media channel. Several of my videos have been censored, and I check around. I go to other channels, and like Brother Nathaniel's channel, who is a Jewish priest who discusses the truth about the history of Zionism. They've blocked his videos too. I have two videos on the Hanukkah Apocrypha about Zionism, done by David Duke, who is was a known racist member of the Klan KKK. But I've said before, that does not change the fact that his research on Zionism and the hypocrisy and the racism is top notch. He didn't get a PhD being misinformed. He did a thorough analysis of Zionism, and they blocked my critique of his videos. So they're trying to control the perception of reality, and that's not going to work. But they're going to continue to throw boulders at us and continue to try to steer the conversation away or turn any critique against them into anti-Semitism. Here again, what is a Semite? The Africans of the diaspora have as much right to claim that from a genetic perspective as the Ashkenazi does. They don't have a monopoly on suffering. And more importantly, suffering, the atrocities that they did in the Holocaust, they have no business treating the Palestinians in the same fashion. It shows they didn't learn anything from that. It shows they were sickened by that. So, they're not nice people. The Zionists are racists. And all you have to do is look at their Babylonian Talmud to know that. So there's nothing I'm saying here that I can't back up with historical evidence. You see, but YouTube censors that. So yeah, you have to find ways to do it. Anyways. So, and when you do it that way, they still block it. I guess that's the point that I'm saying. If you go, they didn't take down the Hanukkah Apocrypha by David Duke that I posted, but they did block it. And they did set it so it can't be shared. So they're stopping information from being transmitted. You can't press like on that video. You can't share that video. It's all facts. It's all historically documented, but they're censoring it because the people that are responsible for it don't want the data to get out. So, but yeah, much respect, mad respect to Boyce Watkins though, because he goes in on them. He goes in on the Zionists and says they're wrong. Period. And to his credit, I have to admit that Roland Martin walked up on the fence too, which is something we wouldn't have seen before. There's blood in the water. The social narratives they used to control, they don't control anymore, and it's only going to grow. So, and when we see collectively black people, the black leaders in the social media begin to talk about the same subjects, that's very, very significant. Because no one clusters like black people do. There's an underlying rhythm. And that's what the racist has always been afraid of. They don't want us to tune back into the collective. Personally, I think it's inevitable. So, I won't ramble on any longer, but you're looking at it right here, 2019, This Week in Black Media, every Wednesday. And next week we'll go into something interesting. So, on that note, until next week, as always, peace and blessings to all. And this has been an Ancestral production.